What do you say, everybody? And Roll Tide, welcome to Cover Crimson. We're going to talk Bama. Ty Simpson, named quarterback. We're going to get back into that again. We did a live show last night and still kind of unpacking Bama's new starting quarterback, which is not a big surprise. What about the tight end position? Are you confident in the guys that transferred in? How do you feel about Cuevas? Is he going to be the guy to make all the plays? Who do these guys remind you of? And we'll talk about the Bama pass rush and more. We're brought to you by Pearl River Resort over there in Philadelphia, Mississippi. The Azaleas, the Oaks, two amazing golf courses at Dancing Rabbit, which is the Augusta you can play. Hour and a half from Tuscaloosa, 2 and change from Birmingham. Got Philip M. Steakhouse. All the things you need for a good time are at Pearl River Resort. All right, let's get the show started. Let's talk a little Bama football as we close in 18 days between now and kickoff against Florida State. Roll Tide. All right, that's Clint Lamb. I'm Mick Gillispie. Again, thank you guys for hanging with us. Cover Crimson YouTube and then the Cover Crimson Podcast Network. You can download us on Spotify, Apple, all those places as we talk Bama football. And we appreciate you guys more than we can tell you. So Roll Tide, like, subscribe, thumbs up, all that stuff. All right, Ty Simpson named the quarterback. You had a night now to, let this sink in. I don't think this is big news, but it is big news, which is pretty funny, right? Because he wasn't really named the starting quarterback, but we assumed that he was starting quarterback. We were never thinking that he wouldn't be.
That's exactly right. And it has made it interesting. But the reason that I think it's worth talking about more is Yea Alabama. They released an article soon after the news broke that was Ty Simpson's first interview since being named the starter. And then they got some Kalen DeBoer quotes to go with it. So, a couple of things, how it went down, Ryan Grubb, Nick Sheridan, which I find that interesting that they included Nick Sheridan. I mean, he's the quarterback's coach, the position coach, so it makes sense. But it was Sheridan, Grubb, and DeBoer all went in there and kind of told the quarterback room that it was going to be Ty. They kind of went over the X's and O's of things to explain how that decision was reached. But also they bragged about the tight-knit quarterback room and how, the closeness of that room. They kind of bragged on that and how they all had each other's back. And, so that was kind of how it was announced. And Ty talked about how his journey is just so different in this NIL era where everybody else is transferring, him sitting and waiting to finally get his opportunity. It's just it's a different way of going about it relative to most of the college football world nowadays. And I said this back in, either December or January, that fans needed to pull for Ty Simpson to not only win the job, but do well. Because the better this story turns out for Ty Simpson, the more likely it is that you're going to get a repeat of Ty Simpson where another guy, same thing with Keon Keeley. Like now that he's finally starting to get in the conversation, the ideal situation would be for him to get his feet wet, be a rotational piece this year, show some flashes, finally start building up some of that momentum. Then guys like LT Overton move on to the NFL after this year. He becomes a bigger part of the rotation, ends up being a heck of a player himself. Like the more of that you get, the more encouraging, the more it's going to encourage other players to follow a similar path. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about was Kalen DeBoer's comment, because I thought it was interesting. He said he, as in Ty Simpson, really came into fall camp and had this way about him that was just confident, had a swagger, but not something where it was all about him or in an arrogant way. He's continued to take steps from what he did this spring, and he's done a great job taking care of the football and still being a guy who will push it down the field and create explosives. He's just been really consistent, and that's what you're looking for. He's been really good as a leader, and just the command of the offense and the trust that everyone has in him, you can see it continue to build. Now, I want to take that piece by piece. Number one, the confidence factor. I think from a play style, I think Jimmy, he has compared him to Bo Nix as far as play style and build and a lot of that stuff. And I do think that's a pretty accurate, comp for him in a lot of ways. Obviously different as far as experience at Auburn relative to experience at Oregon. And just, wait, does this mean that Alabama's getting freshman Bo Nix or sophomore Bo Nix, which I think was very limited? No. But I think just from what they do well, there's some similarities. But to me, this confident swagger, it's not to a point of being cocky, which is what like a Baker Mayfield is. But I think, you know, like a Matt Corral, a Baker Mayfield, a Colt McCoy. Colt McCoy, from a personality standpoint, probably pretty similar to Ty. You know, Chase Daniel, kind of an undersized quarterback at Missouri. Johnny Manziel, the ability to improv. You know, Case Keenum is another one who he kind of reminds me of. Like I was going through and trying to figure out quarterbacks who remind me of Ty Simpson, and that's kind of a list, and it's not perfect, you know, apples to apples. Like they have some differences, but there's, you know, that confident swagger. A lot of those guys, they carried it in different ways, but they all possessed that. They were a little bit undersized. A lot of those guys were really good as far as improving, going off script, making plays, but could still play from within the offense, win from the pocket. Manziel really wasn't that way too much, which is why I don't really like that comp as much. But so that's one element of this that I found interesting, just him talking about the confidence and the swagger that he's bringing to the table. That's exactly what you want. And then the other thing is that he's taken steps since the spring, so he's continued to improve. That's exactly what you want to hear. He's done a great job taking care of the football, which we've already known based off of what he said post-scrimmage. But then also, you know, we talk about protecting the football, playing within the offense, distributing to your playmakers, but also being a playmaker yourself. And the part about, you know, he's taking care of the football, but he's still showing a willingness to push the football downfield. So he's willing to take those chances. And so you don't want a guy playing scared or timid. You know, you want him to be safe with the football, but also be willing to take those chances when they're there, those opportunities. It sounds like he's a good blend of both. So I thought that was really encouraging. And just, you know, Kalen DeBoer mentioning the word consistent, which has been something that we've heard about with Ty Simpson for, you know, a while now. That's exactly what you want. You want your team to come in every day and get the exact same player, good, bad, or indifferent. And it seems like Ty's certainly heading in that direction, or is already, you know, in that place.
Well, it's his job now. And for Alabama, they got, you know, Austin Mack and Keelan Russell that'll get the second team reps, and then Ty Simpson, the first team reps. He did great at the Manning camp. You know, he's shown leadership and command of the offense. He understands the playbook. And so I guess from that aspect, Bama's pretty excited about having somebody with experience. If you're not going to have a guy returning, the next best option, you know, like, and I mean, returning as a starter, you know, now you got somebody that's been there.
That's 100% correct. And he plays with a chip on his shoulder. And when I talk about a lot of those other quarterbacks, you know, Baker Mayfield, because he was a former walk-on, just always played with his chip on his shoulder. And he was a little bit immature. He was a little bit cocky. I loved it. You know, my high school quarterback, Rob Ezel, who was the offense coordinator at South Alabama this past season, now he's the offense coordinator at Wake Forest. You know, little guy, everybody knows him for the Nick Saban impressions that he did while he was a walk-on wide receiver at Alabama. But he was our quarterback when we won state, about 5'9", about 170, 175 pounds, so wasn't big. But he had a lot of those tendencies and skills as far as going off script and just making plays, spinning out of tackles. I mean, he was fantastic. He was also pretty cocky. You know, he was but at the same time, there was like any fear, any anxiety that you had when you have a quarterback that brings that confidence, it's almost infectious to everybody else. Because even if you're second guessing anything, any element of the game, you're like, but I trust my guy here. You know, I know Peyton Manning's going to go out there and help us get a win. You know, oh, we've got Tom Brady on our side. We've got Baker Mayfield on our side. Like these are elements or qualities that you want from your quarterback. And Ty Simpson doesn't carry himself in a cocky or arrogant manner, but he's confident in himself. He is going to do whatever it takes to win, and he's a gritty type of player. And just the more that you know, the first time that he takes off and he lowers a shoulder, and whether he gets blasted or he blasts somebody else, just showing the toughness of hopping right back up and slapping somebody else on the helmet and saying, let's go. Like that was Coker, man. I mean, you saw that stuff from him all the time, and just that team won a national championship. And do I think Jake was the most talented quarterback that Alabama's ever had? No, I do not. That is not meant as a slight, because he was still very talented, but he is, I don't think anybody that Alabama's ever had his grit or
Mhm.
his, doing whatever it takes to help his team win. I just think that's infectious for everybody involved.
Plus, the guys loved him.
They did,
You
everybody.
know, like, they didn't think he was a prima donna. They didn't think he was selfish. They just felt like he was just another guy that was out there and would do anything to win a game. And I mean, you remember that season, it was the defense that just kind of started to rise up after he would make plays. Like, they just, like, really got amped up by the physicality that he played with. But he also, by the end of the season, was just throwing the hell out of the ball. I mean,
Slinging it.
watching him grow with confidence and as a player was really something. And I think that if Alabama would have named him the starting quarterback a long time before they did, it would have happened a lot faster. You know,
It's a great point.
that he was one of those guys that maybe Lane Kiffin didn't see his potential right away. He was the offensive coordinator, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, this guy can play, and won a national championship. And I think that if he would have started in 2014, they would have won that year too.
Well,
Just because of his skill set. I just think his skill set worked. Those guys win, man. Like slinging the ball. He could throw it over the defense, and when he just got confident and just said, hey, I'm just going to do what I do. He was really good. I mean, just like some of the passes that he made in the Iron Bowl, I can remember clearly. And then the 2 playoff games, it's unbelievable. So hopefully Ty Simpson can do that. I didn't realize that Jake was that much taller than Ty. He pointed it out to me on a phone call a couple of days ago. So, okay. I saw Ty in person. He looked pretty tall to me, but I guess he's not as tall.
I think he's probably, they have him listed at 6'2". I think he was 6'1.5" when he was officially measured, coming out of high school. It's possible that he got a little bit taller. Absolutely. But also, if you're 6'1.5" on a roster, they're going to go ahead and list you at 6'2". So it's possible that he's still 6'1.5". Well, yeah. And I mean, but that falls in line with like the Baker Mayfields and the Colt McCoys and, Matt Corral's another guy that he's been compared to. And there's been some pretty high NFL draft picks or some guys who have been pretty successful in the NFL as far as sticking around for a long time. Like, I think there are shades of Case Keenum, and Keenum, I think he was an undrafted free agent, but he was around in the NFL for a long time. I think there's a little Chase Daniel in there. Obviously wasn't drafted, or it was a late round draft pick, one of the two, but stuck around in the NFL for quite a while. So I just think that something that I saw from Jalen Milroe early in his career was just he was kind of willing to put his body on the line. I don't remember who the opponent was. I want to say it was a smaller school. He came in at the end of a game. They were up by a lot. He took off and he got met at the goal line by a defender and just slapped. I mean, he spun around, but popped right back up and just showed kind of that toughness. And I think he was trying to protect himself, which is understandable. But a guy like Ty Simpson, I don't know. I think that he's not the type that's going to shy away from that. It don't matter how many times it happens. Even if people are telling him, like, hey, you've got to stop taking some of these hits. If he can get his team a first down, he's just that style of player. Now, we'll see how that works out. But, I do think that he is a fit for what Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb want to do. And he brings, Michael Penix was just mobile enough. I think he was actually a lot more mobile than he showed. But the fact that he was never really willing to use it, kind of Bryce Young in that sense, where only when he had to, it's like it wasn't that big of a threat. It could be a surprising element in, against Georgia in that SEC championship. Georgia wasn't expecting in that first half Bryce Young to run the ball as much as he did. So it can be a weapon, but that wasn't anything that was ever consistent. That was few and far between. I think Ty Simpson's going to be a bigger part of the run game than people realize. Not saying he's going to be a volume guy necessarily, but I think he'll be very timely with his runs. You might even see some games where it's like certain things aren't working and he takes on Matt Corral and Jackson Dart for Ole Miss. Those were two guys that at times were willing to put a huge chunk of the run game on their shoulders and run, 13, 14, 15 times. I wouldn't be shocked if there was a game where Alabama was struggling in certain elements and he had to pick up that torch and was willing to do it. But I do think that this offense is going to be pretty dynamic. And just with the way that you hear coaches and stuff talking about it, I think there's a quiet confidence right now that this offense is going to be pretty damn good.
There it is right there. Residence Inn by Marriott Ocean City, right there on the Maryland coast. Gorgeous place, the boardwalk, great restaurants, seafood. I mean, everybody loves the crab cakes. Next round, our sister program, they actually went out there and did their show there. Jim Dunaway couldn't believe how big and nice the place was. Tell Keith you said hi. He's from Decatur. He runs the place. And I think you're going to love it, that sunset. Last night I said it was a live picture, but I was lying. Still love to go there.
Hey, Mick,
it's like today, I'd love to be there.
What do you think about? So Dylan Lonergan got named Boston College's starting quarterback. So Bill O'Brien,
he was always good.
He was always good. And so now you got Eli Holstein, who they were part of the same recruiting class. Both came into Alabama, both going to be starters. And I think both of them are going to be effective. But you had, I mean, that was five. I mean, the fact there was 5 quarterbacks in that room is bonkers, because even having 4 nowadays is tough to do. But I think old Dylan Lonergan and Eli Holstein, obviously Eli's already established himself at Pitt, but I think Dylan, I'm not saying he's going to be Holstein level, but I think he's going to prove to be a very good quarterback. Wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being a more successful quarterback than Tommy Castellanos.
Yeah. I mean, look, yes. And I also think that if he would have stayed, it would have been an interesting quarterback battle.
Interesting.
Because he was good, man. All you kept hearing about was how he can spin the ball, and and it was like you get impatient, but we'll see what happens. I mean, like I think he's going to have a great career too. I agree. What do you think about the tight end situation? We went out in the transfer portal, brought 2 guys in. Cuevas comes back. He's a guy that transferred in from Washington. You concerned at all, I guess, is the question.
I am concerned a little bit, because I don't think I think Cuevas isn't 100% healthy. I don't think Danny Lewis is 100% healthy. And I don't think it's anything as far as, I think by the time Florida State rolls around, they're going to be, ready to go. But, Danny Lewis in particular, it's like, man, finally was supposed to get the opportunity to kind of be the primary why, and just he hadn't been healthy this entire offseason. And while he is back at practice after missing the spring, we still don't really know exactly what they're going to have. He's been on the brink of playing for the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
He even got a start against Texas a couple of years ago, and then he kind of disappeared. And I've never been able to understand. I know that they liked the other guys on the roster, Dupree and Oots, and so I guess to an extent that made sense. Nyblack was another one a couple of years ago who was a part of the rotation. But, Lewis, he's been on the brink, but we just haven't seen it. And I've liked what I've seen from him in the limited action. Granted, I'm more so talking about like 8A performances and stuff where he's asked to stay in and pass block. He's got a lot of ability there. I think he's an underrated pass catcher. I think he's a good run blocker, but we haven't had really a chance to see it. And the fact that Kalen DeBoer specifically mentioned the run blocking, especially in short yardage and goal line situations from the scrimmage, I just started thinking about it. And it's like, that was such an element with Dupree and Oots, as far as the off tackle stuff, as far as that needing that extra blocker, getting those guys out in space. They had an advantage there. And, I don't know if Alabama's going to have that. And at the time, I'm like, okay, without Jalen Milroe being the starting quarterback, where there's a ton of perimeter runs, and I think that offense was set up for the Duprees and the Oots to be a more important piece because of their primary blocking ability. But now, Mick, I don't really know what to make of this tight end room, because you've added a bunch of bodies, but they're still adjusting. They were still late enrollees. You've got, because 3 of them were your 2 post-spring transfers. Caleb Edwards was a summer enrollee. Marshall Pritchett, we've heard good things about him, but he kind of was limited and then was pulled early from spring practice. We've already talked about Cuevas and Lewis being banged up. It's just a lot of uncertainty at that position, and it's an important piece of the offense. It's not going to be a featured piece as far as the passing game, but it's a much bigger part of what they want to do than people realize. So they got to get quality play there. I am a little bit concerned about it. And I did want to bring that to the show, because I feel like I'm always rainbows and sunshine. And This is one of those things where it's like, I believe in some of the bodies they have in that room, but there's a lot of uncertainty here right now for sure.
Well, they went into the transfer portal and they got 2 guys to help.
Yeah, they
Well, I
did.
mean, what do you think about those guys?
Well, like I said, it's just they're late to the game. I think Brody Dalton is going to be a part, but there's been little to no buzz with him, and he is kind of he's not a super pass, a super heavy feature piece of the offense. Like he's not going to be a guy who's going to be a dynamic pass catcher. He's more of a blocker. I forgot the guy. Think he went to NC State. He was at Elon, and I don't remember his name, but I watched film, and that guy was one of the best blocking tight ends I'd ever seen. Now the competition was lower, obviously, but that's a guy. It's like, man, I don't know how much of a pass catcher he would have been, and I know that they do want as much balance as possible, but if they were hurting with that, I kind of wish they would have got him because he was really, really good. I think Brody Dalton will be good, and he might have to be the primary wide, depending on what's going on with Danny Lewis. I think between those 2 guys, you can get by with it, but I got to see it because I don't know.
I know one thing, you're going to look good on game day if you go to Roback and use that promo code Crimson20. They got you covered, whether it's hoodies, whether it's Bama polos. You got to look nice at work when you're sporting your Bama gear, in class, maybe on the sideline in the stadium, hanging out at Innisfree with us for the tailgate show. All that stuff, man. You want to look good. CoverCrimson.com's got you covered. And we really appreciate them for being part of what we do here. And every email address get 20% off. And it's hard to believe that football's really almost here. I mean, like, we're going to have games here coming up. Week 0. It's pretty exciting. DeBoer talked about Bama's pass rush. I was on a show today and Zach Schroeder in Pensacola was asking me about my biggest concerns on defense. And I'm like, I don't think it's going to be the pass rush. To me, it'd be the tackling the runners, right? But I feel pretty confident in the pass rush. What does DeBoer think?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because, yesterday I talked about there was 2 things from the scrimmage that was encouraging for the offense and did not make me concerned for the defense. And that was the offense's ability to not turn the football over. I know Alabama's defense is going to be effective at generating turnover, so I'm not concerned about that. It's more encouraging for the offense. And then stopping the run. Like there were some tackle-to-tackle runs that they had success with, especially early in the scrimmage, some run lanes that they were able to take advantage of. And, I brought up, I'm not concerned about the run defense, especially tackle to tackle. And, a lot of people push back and they're like, man, I mean, I saw Vanderbilt in a lot of ways have their way with Alabama's defense as far as on the ground. They saw Oklahoma's offense have a lot of success. And so they're like pushing back. They're like, what do you mean you're not concerned about the defense? First of all, it wasn't 98% of that was not tackle to tackle. The inside run just was damn near impossible for opposing offenses this past season. A lot of it was off tackle. A lot of the issues were run fits. There was a transition period under Kane Womack. As good as I think Jahad Campbell is, he had issues at times with run fits. Nakai Hill-Green is one of the best in the country, in my opinion, when it comes to stopping the run as an off-ball linebacker and fitting the run correctly. So I think in that sense, they'll be improved. The huge drop-off in other areas, losing a guy like Campbell. So it's not going to be, I'm not saying they're going to be better off overall, but just with that element of it. And then, like I said, just guys getting more comfortable in this defense, understanding gap responsibility, more of, you'll get still some 2-gapping from time to time, but it's more of a 1-gap scheme nowadays. And, that was a little bit of an adjustment period, especially when they go those 3-man fronts and you kind of have that roaming wolf playing off the ball a little bit, but it's shallow. It's, you always didn't get the best run fits on that front. I wouldn't be surprised if they did that a little bit less this season. But on top of that, I just think the Wolves are going to be a lot more comfortable handling those responsibilities. So I'm not I will continue to reiterate, I'm not worried about Alabama's run defense. I'm really not. But as far as the pass rush, Kalen DeBoer did mention what I like about DeBoer. And, if Nick Saban, if you ask something more generic, hey, how'd the pass rush do this weekend in the scrimmage? He would say, if you got a question about a specific player, I'll be happy to answer it, but I'm not going to give you a whole rundown on our pass rush and tell you where it's going to be coming from, where opposing teams can look at it too. DeBoer is willing to share a little bit more, give you a little bit more of an overview. I think he does a good job of mentioning names, but not getting too into the nitty gritty of it where he's giving away a ton. But first of all, he mentioned that Alabama's offense just naturally, it does a good job of like slowing down or countering the opposing pass rush. So the fact they're going against the offense in these scrimmages, that's going to negate it a little bit regardless. But some of the names that he mentioned, LT Overton, obviously, he said Quay Russal's done some good things. He mentioned Yanze Pierre and said he's been consistently applying pressure throughout camp. Said he didn't get home in the scrimmage, but that I thought was pretty noteworthy because it's like, okay, who's that second wolf? Is it Jamarian Latham? Is it Yanze Pierre? What are they going to bring to the table? Is Pierre more of a situational player? Is he on the Chris Braswell trajectory where finally in year 3 he starts to get involved in the rotation, and then by next year he's kind of one of those dudes? Like, what ends up happening? But I was encouraged to hear about him applying consistent pressure because I think he's one of the best pure pass rushers on this roster. And then he also mentioned, James Smith not participating in the scrimmage, but he's been a massive part of the pass rush and what Alabama's plans are on that front. So with him coming back whenever that happens, I do think he's going to be a massive part of things as far as providing some complementary interior pass rush. And then we also heard that Keon Keeley had a pretty good day. I don't know how much of it was being on the first team defense, but I know some of it came against the first team offense. So just knowing that, it's like, okay, he's going against SEC starting caliber players at a place like Alabama, and he's having some success. You would fully expect that to translate, at least to some extent, to Saturdays this fall. So I fully expect him to be a part of the rotation and to help Alabama's pass rush.
Awesome. Well, we'll be talking more about this, lining up Coker for an elephant in the room. That's coming up. And you can follow us right here on the Cover Crimson YouTube channel or the Cover Crimson podcast network, where you can download the show's audio, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your your podcasts from. Any final thoughts, Clint?
No, just looking forward to, we're getting closer to the season, 18 days away. And this second scrimmage, we'll be curious to hear how Ty Simpson does now that, there's a little bit of that hunger that's probably gone away because he's not every day going out there saying, I don't even know if I'm going to be the starter. I don't think it's going to affect him much, but I'm saying I would just love to hear, man, this guy got named the starter, came out on Saturday, had his best scrimmage, it was incredible. I would hate to hear that he struggled after being named the starter. That would be not what you wanted to hear. But I'm curious to hear how Austin Mack and Keelan Russell continue to progress, because we've heard really good things about both of those guys as well. And I think that quarterback room's in pretty good shape. So excited to see what happens this weekend, or hear about what happens this weekend. And then we'll be right back here breaking it all down.
All right, guys, thanks for hanging. Brought to you by Pearl River Resort. Mentioned that before. The Timeout Sports Lounge in Golden Moon Casino, hour and a half from Tuscaloosa, 2 and change from Birmingham, right that corridor to your little slice of Vegas. And you don't have to jump on a plane and go all the way out there, but you get the Vegas experience, 20 big screen TVs, full-size bar. You got the walk-up window if you want to make your bets there. You got the kiosks, and then you got the individual kiosks with TVs where you can sit in there and, and do whatever, bet on the games and watch what you want to watch. But they cover all the major sports nationally and internationally, including college football. And Bama winning a national championship in some of our minds could be something that maybe you feel like throwing a little pizza money down on. But anyway, we appreciate Pearl River Resort. Jake and I will be there next week. We invite you guys to come down. Roll Tide, everybody.
Escape to Pearl River Resort.